This video is brought to you by Sailrite. Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions. You can prolong the clear vinyl window material that's on your Dodger by covering it with a Sunbrella cover that snaps on.
This snap-on cover features Sunbrella on the outer surface with a single hem around the perimeter with Evolution fabric, which is very soft and gentle on the clear vinyl that's sewn to the inside.
In this tutorial video, we'll show you how to make snap-on clear vinyl window covers that will simply snap in place over top of your clear vinyl on your Dodger. The outer shell of our snap-on curtain is made from Sunbrella fabric available at Sailrite, while the inside is made from a fabric called Evolution, which is exceptionally soft and helps to protect the clear vinyl from possible scratching. When you want to use your Dodger, simply unsnap it and go sailing. A high-quality clear vinyl should last for years, but you can double that life by protecting it from the sun with a snap-on cover. Let's get started and show you how to make one. Our Dodger has been removed from the frame so we can take a pattern of the front window.
Okay, we have the Dodger laying on the tabletop and we've placed the Durascrim pattern material on top. The Dodger is actually laying so that the inside surface is facing up. We place a binding around the perimeter of the window. This is a 1-inch binding. What we're going to do is make Sunbrella covers with Evolution fabric on the inside to protect the clear vinyl. We are going to have the Evolution fabric stop a 1/2 inch from this finished edge, and the Sunbrella will go all the way to the edge of the binding. So we want to lay our Durascrim pattern material on top of the Dodger as flat as possible. Then we'll use sandbags just to help hold everything in place so that it doesn't move or shift on us. We're going to make 2 patterns. The first pattern will be to the outer edge where the binding rests, and the second pattern will be on the inside for the patterning of the Evolution fabric. So right now I'll just use a marker and place it right on the edge of our 1-inch binding. What we're doing is we're drawing an outer line on our Durascrim pattern material, then we'll draw an inner line. The outer line will be for the Sunbrella and the inner line will be for the Evolution, which helps to protect the clear vinyl window material to the maximum degree. Now, do you need Evolution fabric? Probably not. You could probably get away with just Sunbrella directly on top of the clear vinyl, but if you want the maximum protection and softness, then consider using Evolution fabric sewn around the inner perimeter of your panel. Now we'll use our clear acrylic ruler and we're going to measure in a 1/2 inch from this edge. So clear acrylic ruler makes this job pretty easy. We'll just put it on the edge. We can mark the material.
You may be asking, why are we not using the Evolution fabric all the way to the edge so it covers the clear vinyl completely? Well, that's because we'll be using the Evolution for 2 purposes. First, it will be used to protect the clear vinyl as we fabricate the Dodger. In other words, sew the Dodger together. And then secondly, we'll be using the Evolution fabric on the underside of our Sunbrella snap-on window covers. Here's a look ahead after we have the Sunbrella fabric cut out and the Evolution fabric cut out. I'm going to discuss why we do it this way.
And you'll notice that around the perimeter we have a 1/2 inch, because the glass basically stops right here. So this part of the glass is not protected. You could make your Evolution fabric go all the way to the end where the glass is, or even beyond that if you want. But the reason that we cut it a 1/2 inch short, as we discussed a little bit earlier on, is that we wanted to use this Evolution material to stick it onto the clear vinyl window material in the process of patterning or making the Dodger. So because of that, we needed to stick it onto the clear window and not have our tape go into the area where we were sewing around the perimeter of the window. That way the clear window was protected on both the side that had the canvas that was not cut out and the side that had the Evolution taped on. So again, if you are not using the Evolution to protect your clear vinyl window material when you're making the Dodger, then have the Evolution go all the way to the edge or almost all the way to this edge. You don't want it to stick out, so you want it to be a little bit short. That's something that you can choose to do if you like. For us, it's going to be used for 2 applications.
Now back to patterning.
This line is actually 1.5 inches, I believe. Let's see, yeah, 1.5 inches from this first line. So here where there's a lot of bulk fabric, what we'll do is we'll just measure from this line the same distance that this line is all around the perimeter here, because there's a lot of bulk fabric folded up, so it's hard to get our ruler down there. We could do it, but I'm just going to measure. Okay, we're going to take the sandbags off temporarily here because we need to pattern the opposite side, which we haven't done yet. Okay, before we move the pattern so we can do the opposite half, we're going to mark right where the zipper's teeth are, so we know right where the pattern should be. And then we're going to carefully move this so that we don't scratch the clear vinyl. And it is wise to get a second helper to do this, so I'm going to get one. So now that we have our fabric moved and I had a helper help me so that I didn't drag the glass, we will just pattern the opposite side. The Dodger is facing with the inside facing up. This is the starboard side, so we'll label it Sin for starboard in, and this is the port side, so we'll label it Pin for port in, P-I-N. Now we just cut it out around the outer line and straighten anything that may be a little bit curvy that obviously you would say to yourself, that can't be the line that I patterned on there. So if you have any waviness, straighten it out now. All right, we're measuring here, and you can see it's 1.5 inches, and we didn't mark it up here where the seam was because it wasn't laying flat. So we're going to use our clear acrylic ruler to add the 1.5 inches. Even here at the curve, it's pretty easy to do. So what you want to do is you want to use the ruler here at 1.5 inches and move it around the perimeter as you go to where it is labeled at 1.5 inches. So just keep twisting it around. You can even go around curves this way beautifully. The Evolution fabric has been laid with the lighter side facing the tabletop. The darker side is actually the softer side. You can feel the softness of it compared to this side. So because we patterned our pattern material with Sin, starboard inside, the Sin will be facing up and the dark side will be facing up. So now we'll pattern on top of that. Now I have this line at the top edge. This is where our Evolution will stop. So basically this top edge is completely straight. So I laid the pattern material directly on that edge so I don't have to cut this edge, and placed my sandbags over the top of the pattern material so it won't move. And so now what I can do on any straight edges is just use a straight edge and place it underneath my pattern material so that it's directly lined up with the edge that I struck on this, and then I can pattern that. On the curves, I'll just lift up the pattern material slightly and transfer the marks by using dashes. Okay, notice the pattern material is running off the edge of the table. You can still do this on a small table. All we have to do is just move it down. The sandbags keep everything in place. Now we can pattern the opposite side, the port side. This stuff cuts beautifully with scissors. We don't have to worry about the edges unraveling. We don't have to hem it. It's just going to be a cut edge, and that'll be sewn around the perimeter to the Sunbrella fabric. That'll be the top fabric. Okay, we're adding 1 inch around the perimeter so that we can create a single hem that folds back 1 inch. So we have a little bit more reinforcement for the snaps. So again, we're just using the clear acrylic ruler and going around to add that inch. Now we're also using the chalk pencil cartridge set that's available from Sailrite. It's a great marking pencil for Sunbrella. We also have a soapstone pencil that works well too, but this is fairly new, and I've fallen in love with it because it marks easily without much pressure. In fact, if you put too much pressure on the chalk end, it'll actually break. And we're going to cut around the perimeter with the Serrite Edge hot knife. This will seal the edge of the Sunbrella fabric because we're only going to do a single hem. One thing that we didn't do that we recommend you do is label it SIN for starboard in and PIN for port in. Using the Serrite canvas patterning ruler, we will put the metal edge up against the edge that we just cut with a hot knife, and we will strike a line that is 2 inches from the edge of the fabric. This we will fold to. Now what we'll do is we'll apply double-sided tape around the perimeter close to the raw edge, but not right on it. I usually like to break the double-sided tape rather than cut it. That way I get an end basically like this that makes it easy for me to peel off the transfer paper. When I go around corners, there will be a few wrinkles in your double-sided tape like that because your tape has to shrink on the inner perimeter. That's normal and expected. Using the Serrite canvas patterning ruler, we'll go over our double-sided tape and just press with the end of the canvas patterning ruler where the metal is. And this helps to secure the basting tape well to the Sunbrella. Sunbrella is very prone to not have anything stick to it because that's how the fabric is designed to be: water resistant, stain resistant, dirt resistant. So even glues don't stick well to it. Doing this will help that double-sided tape to stick well. Notice here that I'm putting my finger on the metal part of the ruler, not up here. It is an acrylic ruler, so you can break it. So if you put your finger here and apply your pressure with this finger, you can be assured that you are not going to break your phenomenal Serrite canvas patterning ruler. Now we'll peel off the transfer paper, revealing the glue, and we'll start creating our single hem here to the line that we struck on the fabric. Now here at the edge, we're going to have to cut some relief notches because there's a corner here, but we'll get to that as soon as we go around this perimeter, and then we'll show you how to do that. So peel off the transfer paper as you baste, then use the canvas patterning ruler, again in the same principle that we did for the basting tape, to crease that edge well and to secure the double-sided tape well. Now we're here to a curve, and the fabric is not going to want to take that curve well. You'll notice here as I baste it here, there are some wrinkles that are happening in the fabric because of the curve. So what we have to do is we have to cut a few relief notches to allow the fabric to take that curve well. Before I get to this, I'm going to peel up some of this other transfer paper to reveal the glue so I don't have to worry about it being stuck under a corner. So there we go. So baste that down. There are a few things we can do here. We can cut triangles, or we can cut just some notches at the curve here that do not go deeper than a ½ inch. This will allow it to take the curve and let it relax at the curve because the fabric has to shrink up. Looks like we could use one more about here. Now we can take our canvas patterning ruler and we can carefully crease the fabric and those little slits down. So there we go. So the inner edge has slits in it that are visible, but the outer edge looks beautiful, nice and finished. We're going to use our deluxe 5.5-inch magnetic guide and stick it where we want the stitch to be in this hem. I'm going to put the stitch about 1/8 inch away from the raw edge of the fabric. Just a single straight stitch with a 6 millimeter long stitch length. When we start sewing, we'll do some reversing to lock the stitch in place, and then we just simply sew around the perimeter. As long as you keep the fabric up against the deluxe 5.5-inch magnetic guide, your stitch should be in exactly the same spot. Now when you start sewing, I'm going to first get around this corner. And what you should do is you should look at your stitch on the back side to make sure that it looks good. There we go. So I'm around the corner. I'm going to bury my needle so I don't lose my spot. And I'm going to look, and beautiful stitch on the outside surface. This is the inside surface. If you look at the inside surface close up, you can see the knot is pulled to the top, probably a little bit too much. We can actually release some of the upper tension a little bit because that's a lot of tension. But again, the backside looks good, so I'm not going to go too far. I'm just going to go a little bit less on the upper tension, and now we'll sew. Notice what I do with my hands. I'm positioning my hands on the fabric and positioning my hand here. I sew. Basically where my hands stop, and I bury my needle. So I can't obviously move my hands any further. With my needle buried, I reposition my fabric, make sure everything's sticking down well, and I do the same thing again, over and over again. Doing it this way, I get the straightest stitch possible. Now I'm coming to a corner. I'm going to sew slowly to that corner to about the same spot on the other side, right about there. But my needle's buried. I'm going to roll my fabric around with my needle buried, and I lifted my presser foot, and then I lower my presser foot, and then continue to sew. Okay, this is the sin. This is sin, labeled sin. This is the soft side. We want to put double-sided tape on the other side, which is the lighter side, all around this perimeter. All right, so we have the double-sided tape on the Evolution fabric. It sticks very well to the Evolution fabric. Peel off the transfer paper. Okay, the sin and the pin are up. The soft side is facing me, up, and the side that we just applied the double-sided tape is facing down. Now, we made our Evolution fabric a little bit small because we were planning to use it in the construction of the Dodger. So it goes basically a ½ inch from the folded edge of that hem all around the perimeter. So you want to baste it down so that it's spaced perfectly.
Now, if you are making a Dodger, you would be using the Evolution fabric to protect the clear vinyl in the fabrication of the Dodger. Then, once you're done, you'd untape it from the Dodger and then apply it to your Sunbrella cover as we are now.
Okay, once we have it in the right spot, we want to smooth it out starting from the center and then baste it once it's smoothed out, because you want as few wrinkles as possible and few as bubbles as possible. Remember, the double-sided tape sticks very well to the Evolution, but to the Sunbrella it does not, so it actually moves a little bit as you smooth it out on the Sunbrella. And then once it's in the right spot, then we'll go over it, make sure that it's stuck well to the Sunbrella. I'm happy with the position, so I'm just going to use my Sarat canvas patterning ruler and go around to make sure the double-sided tape sticks well to the Sunbrella. I'm going to put my pin, just a few pins just to make sure everything stays in place. I'm going to put a pin in the middle position, on the top and the bottom, and on the ends. I do trust the double-sided tape fairly well, but I also don't want this to actually move, and it'll be hard to tell whether or not it moved when I get to the sewing machine. Okay, we're just going to sew very close, about an 1/8 inch away from the raw edge of the Evolution fabric. There's no reason to have a lot of tension here. You only want enough tension that it actually looks good on the top side. So I release the tension by about a ½ turn here, and we'll look at it once we sew a little bit. Yeah, that looks good. Less tension means less puckering. Perfect. All right, we have some threads here that we want to use the Cerite thread burner on. This just quickly melts the ends of the thread, and then you press on it. When it gets down low, it actually creates a mushroom head, basically capturing that thread beautifully. Let's do it on this side as well. Oh, that side doesn't need it. Snaps installed for a snap-on window protecting panel are typically not spaced very close together. Anywhere from 15 to 18 inches apart is usually sufficient. The more snaps you have, the more labor it is to install your cover, which means you probably will not use it. Our edge but down here was 77 inches, so 77 divided by 5 equals 15.4. So we're going to mark it where we want each snap location and make sure that it comes out to about 15 inches between each one. This is 15 inches for us, so we're not going to put a snap in the middle here. We're just going to put one at the corners. Then we'll measure approximately 15 inches or so and see if they come spaced out about right. I'm just going to use a straight edge from the snap we used at the bottom and mark a location for the snap at the top along the top edge, even though the distance measurement, including the curve, is a little bit bigger. I think it'll look nice this way. Okay, can we install a snap with the press and snap tool? Absolutely. Down here that we have plenty of room to get to that snap, but up here we do not have a lot of room. Notice there's a lot of fabric here and there's clear vinyl window material, so we'd have to really compress the fabric to get in the throat of the press and snap tool. So what we do in this scenario is we use a system called the SnapRite system. So we have the eyelet die that can be used by itself without the Cerite cutting block and die holder, but this just holds the eyelet well into the hole cutter. And we placed an eyelet onto the die and also a mandrel. So now we can use this anywhere, even if we have a huge chunk of fabric, to put a snap in the middle of a large piece of canvas. Now we want to make sure that we don't scratch the glass. That's why I'm kind of covering the mandrel as I move it into position at the location where I want to install the snap. And I can basically feel where that mandrel is going to come through the binding when I press on it. So now we've got it in the location, so I'm just going to press hard and the mandrel will go right through. And we have the eyelet on the bottom side and I have the stud installed in the SnapRite stud die. There's a rubber O-ring to hold it in place so it won't fall out. Now we just position the mandrel through and depress the lever of the riveting tool until a firm feel is felt. The mandrel does not necessarily need to break. That feels good right there. Now the stud will stick in there because of the O-ring, so just pull it up firmly and it comes right out and their snap's installed. So along the top edge we're going to use the SnapRite system. Along the bottom edge we're going to use the press and snap system. The press and snap tool, we have the stud die and the eyelet die installed on it. The stud goes on this side and gets pressed into there, and it is held in place. And then the eyelet die gets placed on this, the eyelet gets placed on this die down here, and the rubber O-ring kind of holds it in place. So we kind of just position it so the rubber O-ring is holding the outer rim. So it is ready for installation. So here along the bottom edge, we can get plenty of fabric in to put one of these in. Just make sure that we're not going through the excess fabric. So there's the position, and it punches a hole and sets the fastener all with one squeeze of the lever. A little bit hard here, so I'm going to release some pressure. There we go. Okay, all we need to do is make sure that we're not going to be punching through any of this excess fabric, which is fed into the throat of the press and snap tool. That's why we can do it along this bottom edge, but we can't do it at the top edge because of all the excess fabric. So I have a single layer of fabric on the bottom side, and I have it positioned where I want to press the lever, and the snap is installed. The Easy Fit is a great way to position a piece of fabric. It's basically a snap socket with a pin in the top, so we can actually snap it to the studs that we've installed in the Dodger for the placement of our protective panel. And the quick fits are in place, so we can start in the center or we can start on one of the edges. Since we're using quick fits, this makes the job pretty easy. So we want to position this. Basically the edge should be covering the stitch here because we patterned it to the binding edge, the outer perimeter of the binding. So that's probably a pretty good spot. I'm going to push the quick fit through here, and they do have a tool that helps you to do this if you can't get it pushed through. And that pushes that through. And down here, we don't want it super snug. We don't want it super sloppy. We just want a nice fit because you want to be able to quickly install this. And if it's super snug, you won't be using it very often because it'll be a pain. So now that we have that end on, we'll come over here to this end, make sure that it's straight. So I'm just going to work down the line and installing the quick fits. Yep, that looks good. There's one. These protective caps help you from getting poked, and they also keep the snap in, or keep the quick fit in position so we can actually unsnap it and remove one at a time to install the button and the sockets. Now that we have everything in place, and you can actually move these around. If you don't like the position, you can pull the pin and put another hole in there. We didn't really show that, but we did do that in a few locations. Now you can take this tool and pop these off of here like that, and keeps everything in place. So it goes underneath the socket and snaps up. Okay, we have the button die installed in the press and snap tool. The button just goes into this rubber O-ring, and the rubber O-ring basically encapsulates the edges of the button. Then the socket gets snapped onto the socket die like that. Now we're ready to install. Now it's important that you install the snap on the right side of the canvas. So here's our plastic button that holds our pin in place, and there's the hole. The beauty of this, you can see we positioned it twice. We're going to use the hole to the left here. So there's the hole that the Easy Fit made. We don't want the button here, we want the button here. So we can easily see where the barrel is going to go through the hole, and all we do is depress the trigger right over that location until we get a vice grip feel, and that snap button is installed.
Our snap-on clear vinyl window covers are now done. Here's the materials list and the tools that we used. Our Ultrafeed sewing machine was set up in the industrial sewing table with workhorse servo motor for your information. Now our covers can simply be snapped onto our Dodger. They will provide ultimate protection for the clear vinyl window material, and when you're ready to go sailing, simply unsnap them and store the cover. These are other videos that may be of interest to you. Click on them if you'd like to view them. For more free videos like this, be sure to check out the Sayrite website or subscribe to the Sayrite YouTube channel. Be sure to click the bell to be notified of when new videos become available. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sayrite, thanks for watching.